Alrighty. So we've been talking a little bit about Ellen because Ellen's new special just came out and it's the most dramatic thing. The opening to her special is so dramatic. And it seems as if Ellen has missed the point of why people are upset at her and instead has painted herself as a victim, which I just have to say, Ellen, that's not true. Actually, Ellen, that's not true. So this piece came out in the Rolling Stone and it's former employees of her saying that she continues to invalidate and deny their experiences. So I always think it's good to hear from the people who were directly affected by somebody like Ellen, to hear them explain how actually Ellen continues to not take accountability. She is not a victim, not at all. And yet, you know, she's another wealthy, high-powered person in Hollywood who feels like she was stabbed in the back. Like she was kicked out of Hollywood, like she was canceled. And last time we talked about this, I said, look, multiple things can be true at once, okay? Ellen can be a piece of shit and also have dealt with a lot her entire career because of homophobia and having to, you know, perhaps initially lean into the whole, like, I'm nice and wholesome because of the fact that she's a lesbian. Also, you know, a lot of men who are in her field who are also monstrous and yet don't seem to get as much attention as someone like Ellen. But the thing is, it doesn't change the fact that Ellen is responsible for having cultivated and maintained a very toxic workplace for a very long time, for, really fabricating this I'm nice shtick and using that as cover. So let's take a look at what some of her former employees had to say in regards to her Netflix special, For Your Approval. This is a quote from Ellen. If I'm being honest and I have a choice of people remembering me as someone who was mean or someone who was beloved. The thing is, Ellen, it's more than just you being mean. And that's what she kind of keeps turning it into. She's like, oh, God forbid I was mean. I guess I should have ended my shows by saying, fuck you. Ellen, it's not about just being mean, okay? While Degeneres spends much of the special making her case to be viewed with affection once again, reminding us of her steady and hard-earned rise to popularity and laying out the harsh treatment she feels she's experienced at the hands of the media, some staffers who used to work on the Ellen DeGeneres show say the one-hour routine continues to invalidate and deny our experiences. 6 former employees contacted by Rolling Stone, all of whom still work in Hollywood and asked to remain anonymous for fear of retribution, say that in the special, DeGeneres conflates rumors about her unpleasant behavior with more serious allegations made in the summer of 2020 of racism, sexual misconduct, and intimidation at the talk show. Those claims led to an internal investigation at the show and firing of 3 producers. There's a difference between your persona and the way that you were handled in the media versus the culture that you perpetuated, which hurt a lot of people. Right. This is not just about Ellen being a meanie. Can't even lead a toxic workplace anymore without people getting upset. I mean, come on. Come on. Everybody's just being a little bitch. Get with the picture. That's how things go. That's showbiz, baby. You know what I think is also clear in Ellen's comeback tour is that she can't handle the fact that there are a lot of people who don't like her. I think her entire theme, the theme of her special being, so what, I was mean, you know, look at how horribly I've been treated. I think it's indicative of how much she cares about what people think of her and how much she wants to be loved by the general public. She was misrepresenting the narrative and trying to reframe herself as not a bully. She really missed the mark. In the first few minutes of Your Approval, which began streaming September 24th, Degeneres walks viewers through her professional legacy in a montage of clips, resurfacing all she's been through on a public stage. She's like, look at my life. We watch as she gets her start doing stand-up on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, lands the 1994 ABC sitcom Ellen, faces widespread criticism after coming out as gay on the series, and finds success again with her daytime talk show. Degeneres then insinuates she was on the receiving end of a social media pile-on, prompted by a post on X asking for mean stories about her, which led to a flood of headlines about the working environment at her show. Taking the stage to begin her set, Degeneres then says she was kicked out of showbiz twice. once for being gay and once for being mean. It's a solid attempt at reframing the narrative around why the Ellen DeGeneres show went off the air in 2022 after 19 seasons, former employees acknowledge. But it's one that still evades responsibility for the show's allegedly toxic workplace, they say. It feels like it's manipulative. You're titling the show For Your Approval, which suggests that you're trying to guilt the audience into feeling bad for you, and then you're trying to empower yourself at the same time by saying that you endured all of this hard stuff. And the other thing that I always bring up with Ellen is this was not just one Twitter thread. Ellen has notoriously had a bad reputation for years. There's a, like the 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon thing. There's literally a 1 to 2 degrees of someone that you know who's had a terrible experience with Ellen. Whether it's servers at a restaurant, whether it's hair and makeup people, whether it's interns or, low-level employees who worked for her. Ellen has, for a long time now, had a reputation of being one of the most vicious people in Hollywood. Degeneres 66 has said that after this latest Netflix special, she's taking a step back. Although former employees are skeptical that this is truly her final foray in the spotlight. I have to say, I think she's too much of a narcissist. I think what all of these have in common is that they can't leave. When they talk about taking a step back because Hollywood doesn't love them anymore, they can't. They always come back. They're always around because 1, they're allowed to. It's not like they're actually canceled. And 2, because they're fucking narcissists, man. What's my degree of separation from Ellen? I remember the first time that I heard Ellen stories was my boyfriend in college. His sister was a hair and makeup agent in Los Angeles. And she had so many horror stories about hair and makeup clients who worked for Ellen, and she would just go on these rampages and would fire people at a whim and go really nuts. So bad stories about Ellen are not new. And I remember, hearing this when I was in college, and I was like, oh, and then when I moved to LA, it was like just endless stories. I worked production for Ellen's show once, or my friend who was on crew, yada, yada. So many stories of just Ellen being, a raging bitch. And the thing is that she's not uncommon in this, right? This is Hollywood. I understand that. There are toxicity cultivates here. People in power get to be raging monsters because they don't get checked on anything. They have so much power and wealth and influence that they, there's very few people who can actually check them in that. Yeah, I mean, we talk about James Corden all the time. He's another guy who's famously a piece of shit. But anyway, it's not just Ellen being a piece of shit, okay? There were serious allegations, more than just Ellen's an asshole, right? It's not just Ellen's an asshole, but that's what Ellen's making it out to be. She made millions of dollars doing a Netflix special talking about how she got canceled, but by nature of making millions of dollars to do a Netflix special, you were not silenced. You were not kicked out of Hollywood. Most people can't get Netflix specials. As I said, I would like a Netflix special, so please cancel me, because I guess that's the avenue. You get canceled and then you get a Netflix special. One former employee in particular says they looked up to Degeneres when they were growing up, which made their working experience behind the scenes especially disappointing. The former staffer understands and even empathizes with the experiences that Degeneres shares in the special about being ostracized from the entertainment industry after she came out as gay. But they also don't think that experience negates what her employees may have endured. Both things can be true at once. Hollywood was cruel and discriminatory to Degeneres, and she allegedly fostered an unwelcoming environment behind the scenes of her show. As a young person figuring out my sexuality and also being a huge fan of comedy, she was the perfect person to idolize. I have empathy for what she went through back then, and I wish that she could have that empathy now. Especially after all the things she went through, you would think she would try to remember or relate on a human level instead of turning everything into material. You know, that's the sad truth of it, is you get somebody like Ellen, who is rare in her field, being a woman as successful as she is, being a lesbian and, visibly a lesbian. When she came out, it was a huge deal. Ellen's coming out was a massive moment in the industry. And yet power just, as you say, absolute power can corrupt absolutely. And so it's always one of those, I just can't believe this person with their lived experiences turned around and turned out to be like just as bad as the people who had mistreated them. Another employee is struck by how Degeneres compares her career ending when she came out on her sitcom with her talk show ending because people perceived her to be mean. Employees say the comedian's use of the passive voice and her implications that these things happened to her instead of taking ownership of her own behavior is tone deaf, perpetuating a pattern of non-accountability that they say Degeneres has demonstrated over time. Even if her cancellation was because she was mean, that is something that she's done to other people, whereas being gay is about her being judged. And it's interesting that she can't see it outside the lens of herself, one employee says. It only exists as either it's happening to me because I'm a strong woman. They hate strong women. As a strong woman, I can attest to the fact that no woman is ever guilty of bad behavior. It's simply they hate to see a strong lady. It only exists as either it's happening to me because I'm a strong woman or it's happening to me because I'm gay. It's impossible that these are the consequences for my actions. It doesn't even come into her brain that these are consequences. Yeah, this is what we call weaponizing identity. Weaponizing her identity as a woman, weaponizing her identity as a gay woman, and only seeing it as a witch hunt because of those two identifying markers. That this has nothing to do with her behavior, and so she doesn't need to take accountability for her behavior. It's simply because she's a bad bitch who's gay. I'm trans, that means I'm always right and can do no wrong. Yes, that is true. During the special, Degeneres discusses her role as a boss and leader on the show, despite the fact that she never wanted to be either of those things. She also details her own recollections of working behind the scenes with her staffers and colleagues, which are all happy and positive. Oh, you mean from Ellen's point of view, everything throughout the years was all fine and dandy? There was a years-long game of tag, Degeneres says, as well as constant pranks. Former employees who spoke to Rolling Stone say even though Degeneres tries to convince the audience it was a happy-go-lucky place, that was only a reality for certain staffers. The people she liked and the people that she surrounded herself with did have a good time. The favoritism was just so blatant and trickled down to the executive producers, and managers. That's kind of the point, is that the people you're playing tag with aren't the people that were being asked to leave the kitchen that they're eating in so that you can walk by. So this is a common Ellen thing where she would make people leave because she didn't want them to be in her presence. So whether they, oftentimes they were, people with significantly less power, employees, service workers. This is how she would treat people though. Genuinely. If you were somewhere and Ellen felt that she was entitled to the space because she's Ellen, she would demand that you leave her presence, that you no longer make yourself extinct. Some employees believe it's also ironic for Degeneres to mention the toll of cancellation on her mental health, considering their own struggles with their mental health while working under her. One former writer on the show, referring to Degeneres' penchant for pranks, where she would intentionally frighten her employees, adds, "It's true that she scared people as a joke, but that's not always a comfortable workplace to be in when you're on edge, that at some point someone's going to jump out of your closet and it's the person you're most scared of. I would have nightmares for years after that she would be chasing me and I wasn't even involved in that tag game." Comedian and podcast host Kevin Porter sparked a public dialogue about Degeneres back on March 20th, 2020, when he shared a post on X that read, "Right now, we all need a little kindness. Like Ellen DeGeneres always talks about. She's also notoriously one of the meanest people alive. Respond to this with the most insane stories you've heard about Ellen being mean, and I'll match everyone with $2 to LA Food Bank." A version of this appears in the beginning montage of the Netflix special, although it isn't verbatim and doesn't specifically credit Porter. Porter tells Rolling Stone the original intent of the post was to raise money at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in a lighthearted way, something that he saw a lot of his peers doing online. He also points out that while 4-year approval makes it appear as if his jab came out of nowhere in the midst of Degeneres' massively successful talk show, the missing context is important. In the year leading up to the post, Porter says, DeGeneres' stock was already down with the general public. She defended Kevin Hart when he was fired from hosting the Oscars because of his past anti-gay tweets. She doubled down on her friendship with George W. Bush despite criticism from her fans. And Dakota Johnson famously called out DeGeneres on her show for saying she hadn't been invited to Johnson's birthday party when in fact she had been. Actually, Ellen, that's not true. Those things are nothing but the consequences of her actions. Whether you even agree or disagree with it, Dakota Johnson calling DeGeneres out for something being bullshit and Ellen receiving criticism for rubbing shoulders with a war criminal. My tweet is quite lightweight and a little more juicy gossip. Then in the Netflix special, it becomes a better scapegoat for the negative attention. It's a pretty masterful reframing and dodge of everything. According to Porter, no one connected with the special reached out for his permission to use his social media posts, which is why his name and photo were blurred. As for whether or not the ex-employees found DeGeneres' act funny, there were mixed reactions. Most staffers who spoke to Stone say they thought DeGeneres was punching down. One thought it was elementary comedy compared to what the comedian has put out in the past. Some say they appreciated a few jokes, specifically pointing to one about could a mean person dance upstairs, as a bit that flirts with self-awareness and is genuinely funny. But overall, they think For Your Approval doesn't land. Because here's the thing, okay? When you are a celebrity, especially a comedian who, if you're big enough, you will get a Netflix special, you will get to have this big tour and this big comeback. If you are not demonstrating self-awareness, if you are not coming back in a way where it's like, yeah, I fucked up big time and I apologize for that. And I'm going to make jokes because I'm a comedian and because that's how I've always approached life. But to be clear, what I was responsible for is not funny. And no one ever fucking does that. That's the thing. Sometimes they'll inch towards it. And then it's like they have this demon on their shoulder that's like, no, never, ever cave. Never show weakness. You did nothing wrong. And in fact, you're the victim here. And it's why you'll see comedians like Ellen, like Louis C.K., like Dave Chappelle get very defensive in their comebacks, where it's like they never even did the whole, okay, here's me taking accountability, having self-awareness, and then people continue to give me shit, so then I get frustrated. It's literally, oh, I took time, I stepped away and now I'm back and fuck you guys. You think Bush was using her to say he isn't homophobic, he has a gay friend? I think there is just a real chumminess with people who are in certain elite circles. There's a big crossover between politicians and celebrities, and they don't look at each other the way that we look at them, right? The way that a lot of us who were directly impacted by George Bush look at George Bush is not the way that somebody like Ellen DeGeneres, who is a mega millionaire, and her life is not affected by politics. And so she has like a cute little friendship with him, because that's the thing. Like, even when you are gay, when you are, when you are of a marginalized identity, when you get to a certain status like Ellen, where you have cajillion dollars, okay? You have a $60 million mansion that you're complaining about being bored in. You no longer are touched by society and the ills within society in the way that others who do not have your wealth and your power are. So it's not saying that Ellen, has zero struggles as an LGBTQ person, but it's that she is no longer affected because she's no longer affected in the way that like most LGBTQ people are in this country when, with the politics that take place in this country and how often they are facing their rights being stripped from them. Ellen's good. She's in that top echelon now where her money, her wealth, and her power is what is her main identity now. Ellen's rich and white before she's a lesbian at this point. Honestly, yes. Ellen is a charming person when she tries to be, but it's also hard because there's a level of artifice to it. When you've written for her and you've come up with jokes that were supposed to make her seem relatable, now watching it, I'm like, I know all these anecdotes are fake. There's nothing true about any of these, so it's harder to think that she's funny. Some former employees admit they tuned into the special despite being triggered by their former boss. As one person describes it, even however many years removed I am from working there, seeing her just brings me back to that fear and that anxiety that I would have. Literally, the sight of her gives me a trauma response. I can't say that for any other job I've had in any other field. Other former employees, meanwhile, tell Stone that they have zero interest in watching the special at all. It was part of the healing process for everybody to open up about the show, but now I'm so over it and I don't even like to look at her. I won't be adding to her money by adding viewership. Another former employee who opted out of watching says, I doubt this is the last time that we'll hear from her. If there's a big enough price tag on something, she will do it. Yeah, that's the truth of it, right? One, Ellen is a massive egomaniac. Two, she is a capitalist. If the money is right, then she'll do it. You'll never have enough money. When you are as wealthy as Ellen, there's never enough money. For one employee in particular, watching the special brought a degree of finality to their time working at the Ellen Show and the stress-inducing news cycle that surrounded the show's end. Without her taking really any responsibility, because she never really took much, if any, responsibility, I did feel a little closure. It's like, okay, that's that. She's back in comedian mode. I like her better there anyway. Yeah, so I just wanted to read that piece because I think it's important to note that the people who used to work for Ellen feel a certain way about her. Woe is me. I am the real victim here. And, you know, I say it all the time. I truly believe that when individuals reach a point of wealth and fame, which, you know, one or the other or both bring with it power, that they cease to view the world the way many of us do. And they're not normal anymore. It doesn't seem like they have the capacity to be how they should be as human beings. It just feels like your brain is broken and remolded in a way where that's your brain now. And it's not an excuse, like, fuck these people. Unchecked wealth creates monsters. But yeah, I mean, so many of them are just monsters. And I've spent enough time around this environment, you know, people with an obscene amount of wealth, very famous people, and they all live in a different world. And it's not the world that we live in.